Thank you for listening to SPN, the Savage Podcasting Network.
You're listening to The Stephen Savage Show on the Savage Podcasting Network. And now here's your host, film and television director, Stephen Savage.
Thank you, Andrea, and welcome everybody. Savage here with you for another episode of The Stephen Savage Show, the official podcast of the Idlewild International Festival of Cinema, podcasting from Lunatopia Studios in Idlewild, California, just a couple hours outside of Los Angeles, but a world away at over 5,000 feet, high atop beautiful Mount San Jacinto and overlooking the great Coachella Valley. I want to take a minute here to say thanks to all of you who've subscribed and are downloading this podcast and, of course, my other podcast, the true crime series Fatal Gothic, which I do with my friend actress Julia Parker from True Crime Story and American Crime Story and The People vs. O.J. Simpson, etc. The number of regular listeners is over 1,500 now, and counting, not counting those who stream without subscribing, which puts us up around 2,000 per episode. So thanks to all of you who are listening in and to all the new listeners as well. Welcome. So, as our regular listeners know, we've started a new series of interview episodes on the show where we'll be spotlighting music artists, some very well-known and some whom you may not be familiar with, whose music I feel should be spotlighted and introduced to a larger audience. But coming up in the next couple of weeks, we have Cherie Curry from The Runaways is calling in to talk about her new album and a few lesser-known artists that I think you guys should know. But our guest for today's podcast is pretty well known. He's a personal friend of mine who's worked as a musician and composer, and I admire his work very much. You know his work as a gifted guitarist for the band Filter. You may also know some of his film soundtrack and scoring work. He's been on soundtracks for some major movies, the Underworld Awakenings and the cool high-tech monster flick I Frankenstein. And he has some new music and some new ventures going on at the moment, and I thought I would take the time to ask him to come on, and he's agreed. So let me welcome to the podcast, calling in from the beautiful Equinox Farms in Fallbrook, California, my buddy Geno Lenardo. Hey, man, how you doing?
Hey, what's up? I'm good.
Good.
I'm really good.
So I really appreciate you coming on. I know you're busy. You're doing not just the music, but you got a million little ventures going on, I think.
Yeah, well, we're shipping out. Actually, it's funny. We have a candle company here on the farm as well. Mm-hmm. You know, we've got the Airbnbs, but the candle company, we are now the official candle makers for Motley Crue. So we're shipping out the Motley
awesome.
Crue candles today. And then we also did a candle for Jonathan Davis from the band Korn.
Wow.
Custom candle. So that's really taken off. You know, it's been great. You know, because a lot of other things went down. You know, I was working on four different film projects back in December, January, and those all just went away.
Yeah, well,
evaporated.
You're one of those guys. I've never known you to let any moss grow under your ass. So I'm sure you're going to pick up and run with the ball. How are you and your better half, the beautiful Trish, holding up during all this lockdown stuff?
It's been stressful. You know, we lost a lot of income. You know, because the Airbnbs essentially shut down. They changed their policy that people could cancel, cancel same day. Mm-hmm. And then we've had to have fewer of them because people want you to leave it empty for a day or two before they come.
Right.
So you know, it's been stressful, but things are picking back up. You know, so the two of us are great. You know, but it's just between the two of us, we also have to deal with handling the farm. I mean, it's a large enterprise.
Right. So you guys have on the farm itself. You guys have Airbnb rentals. So that's what you're talking about, right? That's got to be.
Yeah. There's four of them. Mm-hmm. There's four of them. Actually, about a year and a half ago, I built a 28-foot teepee.
Nice.
One of our favorite rentals, and we luxed it out. I put it on the deck. And it's right by the arena where the animals hang out, so people can just sit outside of it and watch the animals.
That's great. That area, though, Fallbrook area is so beautiful. I mean, it's just a cool place to hang out, and it's kind of a well-kept secret. right in that sweet spot between Orange County and San Diego County, and it's, it's a secret little California getaway that not a lot of people are hip to yet. So,
it's so great. We're 12 miles from down 76 to Oceanside, so we're really close to the ocean too, which we go down to often, and our guests go down to. But yeah, we're like in the heart of like Fallbrook wine country,
right?
So it's nice.
It's also close. What people who don't live in Southern California don't understand is that you don't have to live in downtown Los Angeles to work there. Like myself, like you. I mean, we're just a hop, skip, and a jump away. The cool thing about LA is once you get outside of LA, there's a million cool places to live where you're not stuck in the city, and that's what I like.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I still work I built a studio here to record, but it's mostly guitars and vocals. It's like a writing room.
Right.
But the main studio I work out of is in Burbank. It's called the Mix Room. That if I need to go in and do some serious stuff, where we have, like when I did Peppermint, the Jen Garner film, I had to work with like 4 different girls, and my buddy who owns it, he's just got way better microphones than I do.
And sure.
The full console. And everything. So yeah, I'll go up there and do that. So, but it's nice to be able, to have both. I do have people down here. I do writer retreats where people come down and write and hang out and track their demo. So, and that's worked out really well.
That's what I found.
They love to just hang out with the animals and then they write lyrics. And,
that's what people would, living in Idyllwild, living in the mountains in this little tiny village. I have more people from LA wanting to come my way and work than me having to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they can decompress and kind of really get into what they're doing.
Right. I'll say, I'll come into town for a few days. We'll do some writing. Oh, well, why don't I come to you? And I'm like, okay, that's even better for me. That's good. So I like to start off giving my listeners a feel, of who we're talking with. I know a lot about you, but I'm sure there's some surprises you could tell me. But let's go over your beginnings, where you're originally from, your education. I know you went to the Berklee School of Music, and what led you to music in the first place as a profession?
Well, it's really interesting. I went to, so I'm from Chicago. I'm from a town outside of Chicago, northwest suburb called Park Ridge. And from Park Ridge, I ended up in a boarding school for the first 2 years of high school called La Lumiere. And it's like the total Dead Poet Society. You got to wear the Brooks Brothers tie and the jacket every day. And, and I was going there because I was more interested in sports. So I was a quarterback for the football team, and I lettered both my years, but I just felt really disenfranchised. I just didn't really get along with a lot of the other students and stuff like that. So I had an actor buddy of mine, this guy Doug Spinuzza, who was going to the Chicago Academy for the Arts. And he said, why don't you come to my school? And I'm like, well, I play a little bass, but I don't do anything really artistic. He's like, oh, dude, come in as an actor. Come and do it, audition as an actor. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I'll show you how to do a monologue. So I did a monologue from Sam Shepard's Curse of the Starving Class, the audition, and then I sang Roxanne and Green Acres while jumping on top of a desk in front of this whole panel, like all the teachers from all the different departments, because the school was 4 floors, and each floor was a different discipline. So it was like art was on the first floor, and then we had dance, and then the drama department was up on the 4th floor, but the 3rd floor was the music floor. So to get up to the drama floor, I would have to walk by all the music people, and I just saw these guys playing, and I was like, that is just amazing. So I went in and I met the head of the department, this guy, Dr. Bruce Horst, and he basically took me under his wing and started giving me private piano lessons, and then teaching me theory and all that. And from there, I just went ballistic on it. I practiced all the time. You have to. They say the 10,000 hours thing is true. You have to be constantly practicing. And so when it came time to go to college, I was like, man, I don't want to, go to a traditional college. So he's like, well, what about Berklee College of Music? And I'm like, all right, let's go for it. And so I wrote a sonata to show them my work, which he helped me with. And then he wrote me this stellar letter of recommendation, and that got me into Berklee. So yeah, that was like in '87. I went to, that was my first year at Berklee. I went '87 to '91. And once I got to Berklee, it was a whole different thing because these guys were amazing, and I was like still learning. Like, you know, I was far below. Mm-hmm. But I had some really great roommates. British jazz pianist Julian Joseph was like one of my biggest mentors, and he was just so cool to me. And he, you know, he just, like, any question I had, and because he's just a genius. Like, I mean, you got to check him out. So from there, I kind of, after the first year, I was doing like songwriting and composition, was like my major, quote unquote. And then, you know, my dad was getting a little itchy. He's like, "What are you going to be a songwriter?" You know, kind of thing. Because my dad was a doctor, you know, and my two brothers are doctors, and everybody else is, you know, all my other siblings are hardcore business people. So he's like, "You got to pick something that you can do basically anywhere in the world and really have a job." So that's where I went into the music production and engineering department. So I had to reapply. It's a separate thing within Berklee that you reapply for. And they said, "Oh, your math scores aren't so great, so we need you to get on the dean's list for this semester, and we're going to send you over to like a shared class, you know, for trigonometry and you know, and then acoustics over at MIT." So I was like, I went to a couple courses, you know, with the, you know, over there. And I did it. I don't know. Even now, I don't even know how I can't remember any of all those things about absorption coefficients or any of that stuff with the acoustics. But I did learn a solid core thing about mic placement and signal flow within the, you know, the board, and you know, your basic things about EQ, compression, you know, which are your basic recording tools. Right. So yeah. So I went through that. Once I left in '91. I went back to Chicago. One of my teachers was like, "Oh man, you should try to go to New York and go to like the Hits Factory or whatever studio." He mentioned some other studio. I can't remember the name. But I was like, "No, I'm going back to Chicago. I want to work for the band Ministry at Chicago Tracks Recording." 3347, you know, and like down on Halstead Street. And yeah, so that's where I went, and they, you know, it was weird because I knew the equipment probably better than some of the other guys there, but they make you go through an old school intern process. Right. So I was interning there for a while, and then there was like one of the artists that came in. They needed like it was a rap act, and they needed like 8 tracks mixed for a live show, like literally the next day. So I had like 12 hours to do it, and I did it. And so Reed, the owner, you know, brought me on as a full-time engineer. And so, yeah, it was about 93 when a band called ChemLab from New York came into the studio. Very industrial, you know, Nine Inch Nails kind of stuff. And they were working on an album called Burnout at the Hydrogen Bar. And I started helping them, like, write the songs and arrange and all that stuff. So we finished the record, and then they leave. They go back to New York. They're from New York. And I get a call from the lead singer, and he says, "Hey, do you want to come on tour with us and play guitar?" And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And it was so funny because one of my best friends and I were living together in this huge loft in downtown Chicago. And, you know, he came to me, he said, I can't afford this. I can't afford, like, it's either my car payment or it's the loft. And I'm like, and he's like, "I'm going to keep my car." And I'm like, "Okay." So it was like perfect timing. I'm like, "All right, great. Let's get rid of the place." And I'm going on tour. So yeah, we went out and I toured with those guys for a couple of years. It was great. You know, it was a little tough. We were in a van. You know, you had 6 guys in a Dodge Ram 3500 church van, right? You know, running around, and we weren't making a lot, so we had to play like every night. I remember during one tour that we did with KMFDM, we did the whole tour with them, but on their days off, we had to book another show. Right. So we did like almost like 40 shows in a row. Like, you know, it was crazy. It was just like playing every day. But it was a blast. You know, I love those guys. I'm still friends with them to this day. That's and cool. Yeah. So that's from there. I ended up back at Trax in around '95, and one of the original founders of Filter was Brian Leesgang, who was a friend of mine, and he used to come to the studio and just kind of hang out. It's like see what was the new thing that people were doing. You know, like they were like distorting guitars through samplers and stuff like that. And he said, "Hey, I got this project. I'm just going to produce it, but it's Richard Patrick from Nine Inch Nails.
Right.
He was a guitarist, and he played me a few tracks. Hey Man was on the first demo that he played me, and I think it was another song called Dose, and then Take Another, all of which are on the first album, Short Bus.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, we need a road warrior because this thing, we don't know what's going to happen here. We may have to do another van tour." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And then all of a sudden, the producer Joel Silver put Him and I Shot at the end of Demon Night, Tales from the Crypt film or whatever, and the song just took off.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, "Oh my God, we don't have a drummer." Because it was like the three of us, and then the bass player Frank came with Richie. They both moved from Cleveland to Chicago, and so we had to quickly audition drummers, and it was crazy. We auditioned everybody in the city, and then we hit on this guy Matt Walker, who's currently Morrissey's drummer, but he's also drummed for Garbage. He drummed for the Smashing Pumpkins.
Right. I met that. I actually at Small World. I met that guy. I was doing live edits at the Hollywood Bowl, and there was a Morrissey show with Billy Idol, and
cool.
Very cool guy. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And so that just kicked it off, and it was just a whirlwind, doing from 1996 to 2003. Mm-hmm. When I left, it was just crazy. I mean, I think we did like 1,400 shows in 28 countries.
Right.
We did Leno, we did Letterman, did Conan twice, did the Coast and Daily Show, all sorts of MTV shows around, like in London and in Canada, and actually we did much music in Canada. So, that was it. And then, like, unfortunately, Rich had to go into rehab, and that kind of, totally shut the whole thing down for a while. And by the time that he had kind of brought it back, he didn't want to, like, get out of the rehab and go immediately back on the road. He wanted some time. So I just, I had a son, and he was, just a young little guy. And I'm like, I got to do something else. Mm-hmm. Like, I've got to start another band, or I've got to, and that's where I originally started getting into writing for film and stuff. Mm-hmm. I met a director, in Chicago, and he was doing a documentary about Katrina. That was like my first one that I worked on. It was called Desert Bayou. Mm-hmm. And it was about 600 people from New Orleans that were put on a JetBlue plane and flown to, what is it? What is the town in Salt Lake City, where all the Mormon people are highly prevalent. There's like no black people there, and these are all, and they put them on a base. They like confine them. And the thing said that they were criminals and all that stuff, and there was like one out of the 600 that had a criminal record. So, So he thought this was a great fish out of water story. Mm-hmm. That was the first movie I scored.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Filter was like a huge band. I mean, I know people are going to go, wow, I want to know more about that. But the thing about Filter was mostly what I think Filter, just my opinion, was leading you into film all the time, because your arrangements and your guitar playing with that band always had, to me, this cinematic, I don't know how to explain it, like Guitar Hero with a bigger scope. I don't know, but you're playing with that band. Seems to me like a lot of what you guys were doing sounded like it would fit into scores and soundtracks for a million different movies. And I think we were in back in the day. We were in all, like 2 of the Crow movies, Anger Management, Cable Guy. There's a bunch of them that our manager got us placed in, and so we had things that that was kind of our style. Yeah,
like the kind of cinematic, rock.
Right. Yeah, it had just this hugeness about it, and then you'd look on stage, and it's still, you guys weren't like, you didn't have 8,000 orchestra people sitting behind you. It's just the band made this huge noise that had a cinematic kind of vibe to it that I always appreciated. Who are the musicians and bands that you draw inspiration from? Or who are your favorites, your heroes over the years?
There's a lot. I mean, I grew up, in the household fighting over the Beatles and the Stones. I mean, the Beatles definitely, the song craftsmanship. I mean, the Stones are amazing too. It was just 2 different things. My older brothers and sisters, I inherited all their records. I mean, my sister gave me, I still have it to this day, original White Album, original Sgt. Pepper's, Meet the Beatles. You know, it's like I had all this stuff. And so it started there, but I think when like kind of like the kind of like new wavy stuff came in, I started getting into the synths. You know, it was like the Cars, and they had like cool synth lines mixed in, but they were like arranged. They weren't just like, you know, totally synthed out, like kind of stuff. They were arranged within these tight rock songs. And from there, I think like the Police and U2 definitely, you know, had a huge impact on me. You know, and then, you know, I got into like The Cure and Joy Division and Voivod. You know, it's just different, like really eclectic, because I never knew, you know, my sister would bring home a Blondie record, you know, Parallel Lines. I was like, what the hell? That's fucking amazing. What is that? You know, and then it's just like crazy, you know, eclectic thing. So I've kind of drawn from all that.
What's funny to me is that my musician friends who say that the Beatles were a big influence always have the most eclectic tastes. It's something about being a fan of the Beatles early on in your life that draws you to spider out into all these other genres and stuff. It's interesting. I find that interesting that you said that.
Well, they were all explored. You know, they really explored the way they were unconventional in the way they recorded.
Right.
You know, and that I think led into, you know, the Queen records. They were highly unconventional. You know, they were swinging amps in the thing with the microphone to get like a weird phase effect on it.
Right.
You know, all sorts of unorthodox recording techniques.
Right.
That's what I was really into, and that's what led me towards industrial music and like sampling and, you know, Nine Inch Nails and Ministry. Was that these guys were just trying to mutilate sound, you know, but put it in a song context, you know. So it wasn't just like avant-garde sound mangling. It was, you know, it had this like purpose and the weird, you know, stealing voice samples from movies and putting them in there, you know. You know, there's like the Man with the Golden Arm, Frank Sinatra movie.
Right.
That's in the Ministry song Just One Fix. And I was working on that record, and I was like, what? And like, you know, as an engineer, they would set me out in the live room with a sampler and you know, and just recording stuff, weird random stuff from movies. And then they cut it up and they detune it or pitch it up, you know, like it was like really cool. I was like, wow, these guys are doing something completely different. So, and that bled into Filter for sure. That influenced Filter a lot.
Yeah. You guys played big arenas, but you're real comfortable on any stage, right? I mean, I know you've done House of Blues, which kind of a small medium kind of place, and you've done smaller gigs.
Yeah.
I know you did the Viper Room. I had a bunch of friends that went to that show. Is there a difference for you when you're preparing them for a large gig as opposed to a smaller venue? Or is it just,
I love them both in different ways because, you know, the thing about playing a smaller venue is it captures the energy with the audience. In this tight thing, and you can really see everybody and look them in the eye. When you're playing to a stadium like FedEx Arena, you know, in Washington D.C., it's like there was, I don't know, 120,000 people or 100,000 people, and you kind of just do Greek theater, you know.
Right.
I'll do a little more Pete Townsend style, you know, movement, and it's, you know, it's Greek theater. You got to kind of like get it out there. Yeah. But I'm only actually seeing, you know, the first 20 rows, you know, as far as like who I'm drawing from, you know, drawing energy from.
Right.
But they're both, you know, they're both amazing.
Yeah.
I just love performing, you know, for people and seeing how excited and enthralled.
Yeah. And
just over the top they get.
Yeah, it is kind of Greek theater sometimes when you think about rock and roll shows. It's you got to hit the back row, man, and sometimes that back row is a long ways away. All right, We're going to play something from Geno Lenardo. This is one of my favorite songs of the last 15 years or so. This is called Push Me, and this features vocalist Ash Costello. Can you give us just a real quick background on this tune and how you ended up working with Ash on this?
She was one of 4 different female singers that were brought to me. You know, I basically built the track first, and then we tried a couple different people, and it didn't work out. And the director was getting pretty itchy, you know, about it. because it's a really important part of the thing. And I mean, I guess I got a precursor to this by saying it's the same people. Brian McNellis is his name. He is the head of Lakeshore Records for the now defunct Lakeshore Entertainment that made those films. He has been a really old friend of mine. Actually, he was our manager in ChemLab, which is so weird. He went on to like run Cleopatra Records and a bunch of other companies, and then he ended up at Lakeshore. So I went in, and the first things I was working on were the Underworld movies. And then from there, goes to I Frankenstein, and then we get to this one, Peppermint, and he's like, yeah, we definitely want a female vocalist, and they were trying to find all sorts of people, you know, but within the budget and all that stuff, and you know, it was just like a political kind of thing. But they have a relationship with Century Media, and that's where she's one of the Century Media artists. So she came in and she killed it, and the director was like, that's the one.
Good. Yeah, she's great. But I mean, this is one song of yours, of all your music, if this is one that I would say, you know, this is definitely a Geno song. I mean, this just has you all over it. It's wonderful. I love it. So
Thanks,
here we
man.
go. Geno Lenardo, Push Me on the Stephen Savage Show.
Hurt more.
That's just a great song, man. It's just everything about it is rock and roll all the way, but it's rock and roll it's kind of got this almost Led Zeppelin edge with a gothy kind of feel to it, but it's all about just the presentation is so sweet. It's tight. You got a pretty exciting.
I do love Zeppelin.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I know. You got a pretty exciting new business you're working on. I think it's pretty exciting. Tell us all about that. What's going on?
Well, it's music licensing. Basically, what we're doing, unbelievably, I found an old friend of mine who's a businessman in his own right. He said, "Yeah, I want to support this idea." So it's like hard. I'm unbelievable. I'm in the middle of race war and a pandemic, and I have this guy that wants to, invest. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to do this. So what it came from was I've been doing a lot of work with different music houses and through my publisher BMG, and just working on getting stuff synced. Be it a Levi's commercial, Dell. Mm-hmm. I just did a Fanta commercial for the soda. So
nice.
So during the process of that, I've worked with a whole bunch of different singers in different genres because, I do it according to the brief that they send me. Mm-hmm. If they want like neo soul, I call up my buddy MJ Ultra and he kills it. If they want rap, I call up my buddy Zeely, who's a rapper from Austin, Texas, and he kills it. So I have all these tracks with all these people, and what I'm doing is just kind of consolidating that into, we're going to have one site. And the video director, Dean Carr, is going to do like a splash movie introducing everybody. But it's literally, there's 7 artists that, are going to be working with me. And we already have a bunch of catalog already made, Sure. And there's everybody from electronic artists like Black Asteroid to Lindsay from Cold, who's staying with us. She's got her own solo stuff that's going to be part of it. And Lucas Rossi, who won Star Supernova, he's my main singer. But we have a ton of material. And so what I'm doing is just kind of consolidating all this so that I can just send a link to a music supervisor mm-hmm. and or a director, and they can just go through by genre and take a listen, see if they like anything.
That's such a great idea. It's just a fantastic idea, especially when you think about what it costs to put really well-known artists and songs into a movie. I mean, it's people dream about that. I'll tell you a story about me is that twice now I've done films where the producers have gotten festival licensing for the movie, whatever movie it is, to go through the festival circuit for sale, and they get the licensing for festivals only. My film Cosmic Radio, there was Peter Gabriel and Dolly Parton.
Yeah, but you can't get those actual.
No, and it came right down to it. I was pretty new filmmaker then. I saw the final cut of the final sound design, and I go, what happened to that Peter Gabriel song? Or what about that Elton song or that Cat Stevens song? And they said, good luck with that, buddy. So has licensing songs for movies from a songwriter's point of view, has that process changed any since you've been doing it?
I mean, it's just tough. I mean, it's always been tough. A lot of the time I'm doing it on my own. Mm-hmm. And it's, it's really tough unless, if it just depends on the budget, right? So if you're Marvel, if you can get AC/DC songs in your Iron Man movie, right. But if you're an independent, it's just really tough. And people do stuff like sound-alikes, and stuff like that. But what I do is create original content that these guys, none of the artists that I work with, it's not like an exclusive thing where I'm signing them. It's not a record deal. They can go shop it wherever they want. Mm-hmm. It's just music that we've written together. Mm-hmm. And I have the full force of BMG's sync team to take it out and shop it to different people. So that's the thing, but it's still really tough. I mean, for every song that I've gotten in a major motion picture, there's been 100 that I wrote that never made it anywhere. Sure. They're still sitting on my hard drive.
Well, this company though is one that when my film festival, the Idlewild International Film Festival, comes up again, I want to get together with you and really push your company because I think it's a great idea. If I'm a filmmaker and I want, let's say, an AC/DC song and I can't afford it, there's no way. But you can give me something from that
with
has that
Lucas
same...
Lucas and I can sit down and write something in 3 days.
Yeah, that sounds, that has the
and
feel.
It's the same tempo.
Right,
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. It's such a great idea. It's perfect.
I just think the music, like the way it's moving forward, it's really interesting. We just had one of the execs from Live Nation down here staying in the teepee, and we talked for a long time. And he's like, it's going to open, but we don't want to weaponize an artist where they're carrying, a thing, or people are getting reckless because they want to go see that artist. Sure. But it's going to come back, but it's going to take a long time. So there's not going to be any live thing. Like Lucas has been doing stage-it shows where you buy the coins. It's like buying a ticket, pay what you want, kind of a thing, and then you can tip him during the show. And I've been supporting him on that, because there's really no live income, which was basically with what happened with streaming. Artists aren't getting the money that they used to get. It's just not. That's a whole nother thing I could get into with you. Yeah. And Spotify's and Pandora's of the world not paying, proper royalty rates.
Yeah,
but we're working on that. We're working on that too. There's a movement, trying to change that and wake up to Congress. But yeah, so it's just we have to do something else, and licensing's really what's still out there. People are still making content, and even now, because people are, voraciously consuming content. They need more. There's going to be more shows. As soon as they start lifting the bans, I heard that Vancouver is lifting the shooting, the ban on shooting. So productions are sparking back up because, the Netflix of the world, the Hulu's, they need more content. And in that content, they're going to need more music content.
Yeah, it all, falls together. I had planned, was putting together for this July, a brand new 3-day music festival. To
that's right. Yeah,
conjoin with the film festival, with my film festival. It's called the Lily Rock Film Festival, and there's a brand new amphitheater in Idlewild where I'm at currently. It's beautiful. It's an amazing, it's over 1,000 people. You could get in there, and the amphitheater looks like a little mini Hollywood Bowl. And we had to cancel that, of course. But I'm pretty confident it's going to be back up in next July. So I'm hoping that within the year things will start opening up enough. But you're right. People have had to get really creative. Artists have had to really think even more outside of the box than they used to. Just trying to make it
because it's a completely different landscape. Yeah. It's kind of a completely different economy. It's brutal. It's like, I'm glad we've got the Airbnbs and the candle company especially.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the farm, Equinox Farms, and of course the venture you're involved with Trish, your candle company, and some of the clientele who are buying your beautiful candles are major rock stars. So tell us how all that came about. The candles are amazing, by the way. I have 5 of them, and I've never lit one of them. They just have such a great smell. I just let them sit in my studio and let the place smell gorgeous when I walk in.
Well, Trish has a background in fragrance. Okay, so first of all, it's called eqxshop.com. That's the main candle company, and then the farm is equinoxfarms.net, and that people can go there to check out the Airbnb, see the property, see what animals we have. We've got a llama, an alpaca, a couple horses, goats, pigs, chickens, ducks. All the basic stuff on a farm, right? So what happened is through the Airbnbs, that's where Trish started. She has a background in fragrance. She works with Origins and Estee Lauder. And so she actually custom makes all the scents. I just put the wicks in and do the labeling. For Jonathan from Korn's candle, I had to go find a laser etcher to do his logo. He wanted a very specific thing that ended up to have to be etched and then hand painted in gold. Wow. So that one's like super luxe, kind of a thing. But it started with just our guests. We put them in the Airbnbs and people would buy them, and then she kind of just grew it into the shop, eqxshop.com on Shopify, and it really started to take off, because she's got these really funny things, like some of the ones during the quarantine are wash your damn hands and quarantine AF, calm the F down, just kind of really snarky kind of stuff, which people found was really funny. Yeah. And then we started doing pop-up shops, around the beach cities down here. and they just started to fly like hotcakes. Mm-hmm. And then I got the idea. I'm like, man, what if like bands, it actually came from Lucas Rossi told me that Tommy Lee loved Nag Champa candles backstage. Mm-hmm. Like he was like, so I hit up Tommy and I'm like, hey, can we try and make you a candle? And he's like, yeah, for sure. So we made an initial batch. We did like a kind of a fake shoot. We kind of just took the artwork off the internet mm-hmm. and all that, and did like a mock photo shoot with the candle. And then we sent him a custom scent that is Nag Champa and Palo Santo. And he was just like, yep, we're doing this. So then we had to go to their management, and the management got us to Global Merchandising, which is the merch company mm-hmm. that they use. And him and Nikki Six went and designed their own artwork for each of their own candles. And here we are, with that. And the other thing is, same thing. These are guys that I know. So I reached out to Jonathan Davis directly and said, hey, would you be interested in trying the candle? And then we got in with his management over at Velvet Hammer, and they just loved it. They're like, this is one of the coolest projects. Like Taylor, his, day-to-day manager, this is amazing. This is great. So we went to their offices a bunch. We gave them a ton of different samples of scents. And then it ended up that he wanted a custom scent. It was really earthy, right. Like a lot of pine and, so Trish cooked it up. It's called Magic with a CK, and that's Jonathan's scent.
Wow.
Just like Tommy's got his own custom scent. And they're going to launch them. We're going to promote it too, but they're going to do a separate launch, mm-hmm. With each of their own things. And, that's really just been great. And I think it's only going to grow. They just did an initial order, but I mean, once they go out the door, people are going to be, and you do a swipe up on Instagram and people are going to be ordering. We're going to be swamped. Right. I'm like, we're going to be like a full-time candle company. I'm going to put music on the side.
Well, you know what? You just take it as it comes, I guess, and swing for the fences. So I want to get back into the music a little bit. This is a tune that I just love to death. It's from the Underworld Awakenings soundtrack, and it's a tune called Heavy Prey. And the vocalist on this is Lacey Strum, and I think of all the singers I've heard you with, she comes the closest to really complementing your playing style. I really think that if you guys started a band together and just did a 4-piece rock thing, I would go see it 100 times. She
was great, and she's just this tiny little thing. Right. That voice is like just a roar. Like, she just. It's so funny when we shot the video for it. There's a video out there mm-hmm. that like short shot, and she was actually singing the stuff, and like she could just take after take do that scream at the end, and I was like, wow, okay, cool.
Yeah, powerhouse vocals, but all the work all around is just awesome. It's just a cool song. So anyway,
thanks. I was really shocked by that getting picked because it's in 6/8. Like, I thought I was a little too exotic for them, but they loved it.
It is just a great tune, and I've got it on my phone, and it comes up in my playlist, and it's just, I don't even think of it as a soundtrack song. It's just a standalone amazing song, and I'm a big Kate Beckinsale fan, so the Underworld thing is hot for me. So anyway, everybody, here's Heavy Prey from the Underworld Awakenings soundtrack, featuring Geno Lenardo on The Stephen Savage Show. Amazing tune, man. Great work. I just love all the stuff. You have such a unique sort of approach to songwriting in general, but to how to kind of fit a song into the overall vibe of a film. I mean, that song alone just fits the whole franchise when you think about it. It's just and
in the video, the editor, whoever edited the video, I never met him, but he just nailed it. Like all the cuts like really work with the track.
Yeah.
Like when the elevator's descending upon her, and there's a shot up on Kate where she's like, crouching below the elevator coming down on her.
Right.
There's just a bunch of really good stuff.
I mean, it's just like a music video standalone on its own, even if there was no movie. It's just cool. The whole thing is amazing.
Right, that would have been cool.
Yeah. So where do you see your career in music in 5 years? What are your ultimate goals? I
mean, I definitely want to step up the film and television and video games. I'm in the new Cyberpunk 2077 game, which is by a company called CD Projekt Red, and Keanu Reeves is in that. And they made the game The Witcher, and this is like one of the most highly anticipated video games. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed doing that. So I'd like to get into deeper into all that, like take this company into all of those different fields. Mm-hmm. And if we can get it together, Lucas and I want to do a full-blown band and get back on the road.
Yeah, there you go.
So, I'd love to be out there playing again. Who wouldn't? Yeah. But it's just the the craziness we've seen this year. It's just like,
I don't know. I'm just thinking that it's a door that's it's a new door is gonna open up, and we'll all see the potential and possibilities in this supposed new normal they're talking about, because music isn't going away, that's for sure.
Yeah, and film, is not going away either. I mean, it's funny back when I was working with this director, Mark David, and he's like, "Oh man, I think film's just done." And I'm like, "Dude, no, don't be doom and gloom. It's gonna come back, Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for today's show. But before we let him go, Geno, tell my listeners where they can find out more about you. You mentioned a couple of websites earlier. If you could give us those again, and about your work and about the candles, but also about the music, websites, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. If anyone has a hankering to get to know more about what you're doing.
Cool. You can go to glmusicworks.com. That's my little site. And then the farm, if anybody want to come down and stay, it's equinoxfarms.net. But if you get on Airbnb, it'll pop up. The only thing is, it's not like consolidated on Airbnb. It's four different listings, so they just kind of pop up in the algorithm, but you can kind of hunt them down. And then the candle company is eqxshop.com, and go there and you can see all the fun stuff that we do.
Excellent. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us, but I want to remind everyone that you can find this podcast and the Fatal Gothic podcast as well on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podbean, and Pandora, and a bunch of other platforms that I'm finding people are letting me know that we're on around the world. So feel free to leave a rating and a comment and all that good stuff. That'd be great. So for Geno Lenardo and myself, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot, Geno.
All right, thank you, man. Thanks a lot.
Always remember that we are love. We are love.